There's one customer who followed up with me about a year ago, and she was like, after launching my quiz, my list grew by a ton. My business grew like crazy. I got a book deal. I'm basically living my dream life now. And it started with the quiz. And that's not an uncommon story for us.
Hey, Bootstrappers! Welcome to Bootstrap Stories, the podcast where founders, marketers, and thoughtful leaders share the most actionable tips on building a successful business. After meeting with hundreds of bootstrappers in the past years, I figured out that we all struggle to grow our businesses. But the truth is that most of us don't know where to ask for help or advice. That's why I decided to start this podcast, to give you all the keys to succeed at every stage of your business. All the tested strategies for solving your struggles and taking your business to a new level. No fluff, no bullshit, only a real talk between friends that help each other succeed. So today my guest for this episode is Josh Haynam, co-founder of Interact. Josh, welcome to Bootstrap Stories.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
I'm really excited about our chat today and learn, how you bootstrap Interact. So can you give us maybe a bit of numbers and background on the company?
Yeah, totally. So we're currently just over 2.7 million in annual recurring revenue, approaching 3. So pretty much already there, which is really exciting. We've been in operation since 2013. We started working on the basics of the company in 2011. So it's been just about a decade that we've been building it fully bootstrapped, which, there's lots of reasons for that we can get into later. But yeah, it's been a long journey. 10 years in software is a really long time. We've seen lots of cycles of companies come and go, and we've kind of just taken this very methodical, we're the turtle, totally in the turtle and hare race. Yeah, and that's kind of the background of it. I started with my friend, a couple of friends in college, and that's where we got our beginnings. And before that, I was an entrepreneur since I was 15 years old. So I never had a real job. My co-founders never had a real job. So we like to joke. and now we're here. So that's how it got started.
That's really cool. And can you kind of pitch a bit Interact? What does it do? Who is it for?
Yeah, totally. So it's a quiz building tool, and basically it's a quiz building tool for growing your email list. So you can create an interactive quiz that draws people in and has a conversation with them, pulls them into your world. You get some back and forth, almost like you would if you were doing a consultation, like a 15-minute chat type of thing. But it's all automated. At the end of it, you can ask them for their email address before the results. It's optional. And then if they put in that email, it connects up to all of your other systems, your email marketing. You can filter based on answers to questions and which result people got. So it's a really great way of both building an email list. It's super effective for that. And also filtering, segmenting, getting people into buckets, which is becoming more and more important, especially with the way that email is. And there's a lot more stringencies around sending bulk emails and blasts and stuff like that. The systems are getting really tight on that. So now it's becoming more important. And this tool is a great way of really building that relationship and sending more personalized emails.
Nice. That's really interesting. And who's your target audience? Is it bigger brands or smaller brands or a bit of everyone?
Yeah, so it's interesting. The first 5 years or so, we really just tried to work with everybody. And I was just doing a retrospective on our 0 to 1 million journey. And the first 5 years, we were all over the place. We tried everything. We worked with giant brands like the American Red Cross and Forbes and just huge companies. And then around year 5, we really realized that the group that was having the most success with it was actually online creators, like course creators, coaches, small e-commerce brands also kind of falls into that. And so the last 3 or so years, we've really focused on that audience and gone deep on helping them, which means the tool is not as effective for big brands. We don't have, a lot of the enterprise features that you would need, but that's a very conscious choice that we've made to focus on those industries.
And I think it can be really interesting to dig in also a bit on that part, because you've been in the business for a long time. So you as you mentioned, you had opportunities to kind of go enterprise. So what kind of pushed you towards saying, you know what, I want to focus on smaller businesses because those enterprise deals are like not for me? Was it because of the time it takes to onboard enterprise? Was it like the structure and all their requirements, which can be a pain in the ass? Or like how did you come up with choosing like the focus on SMBs?
Yeah, it's interesting looking back and kind of doing an objective analysis of your own company, because when you're in it, right, it's so emotional. You get tied to everything. You're like, this is going to be the thing that works. This is how we're going to cross the chasm, like that book. And now we're going to have viral growth, right? And we never achieved that. And we still haven't. It's been very linear over 10 years, which is totally fine. But when we did try to achieve that, it was usually through sales. And we tried twice in years 3 and 4 and 5, actually. So it kind of spanned a 3-year stretch where we really brought in different teams of salespeople. We went really hard on outbound, tons of messaging, calls. We did get people that were interested, but the sales cycle was super long. There was a lot of requirements around specificities of each quiz application, which basically meant like by the time we were done, we were building out completely different quizzes for each person. And at that point, we were an agency. And before my co-founders and I started, we were an agency, and we knew we didn't want to go back to that because it's just a rough existence, especially when you're building applications. People want so many different things. And by the time you're done with it, you're not even happy with what you made, because the clients have all these ideas and you're not able to bring your ideas to life, which is kind of crippling to the creative spirit that we really thrive on. So those were kind of the big reasons. It was super slow. People wanted really specific stuff. And at the end of the day, by the time we got to the requirements that they actually wanted, in reality, it was really just that they wanted something built custom that integrated with all of their systems. And at that point, it's not even a software anymore. You're just building something and handing it over to them to maintain. Maybe you could charge a maintenance fee, but we weren't interested in that. So we pretty much saw that was the option on that side. And at the same time, there were these coaches and course creators who were using the product. We didn't even know who they were, and they were having a lot of success with it. So we noticed that, and that's why we decided to go that route. It's kind of the route of least resistance, which honestly, I feel like sometimes you have to do if you're bootstrapped, because you can't afford to try to force things to work. You don't have millions of dollars to be like, let's make this work. Let's bring in the best experts. Let's push through. You kind of sometimes have to just go with what's working. And that's what we ended up doing.
Nice. I think that's really interesting. And I had actually similar experience with enterprise deals where you realize that you're slowly becoming like an agency and that you have to spend so much time doing like consulting and kind of like customize things, etc. So it's I understand like the pain and the frustration. Something I was also discussing with Andrew the other day, Andrew from MicroAcquire. It's basically something that he did when he started working on MicroAcquire is put a list of people he wanted to work with. And I found it super interesting, understanding who you want to serve, who you want to help first. So you can really focus on that niche, and enterprise most of the time is not the go-to for bootstrap startups. And I was curious because how exactly, you told me it took you about 5 years to go from 0 to 1 million. Was it? Yeah. So
yes, 6 years.
6 years. So what was kind of the first growth strategy you used to acquire your first customers and get scale to 1 million?
Yeah. So first we tried a few things that didn't work. The first thing that we did was we went on Upwork, which was called Elance back then. And we found people who wanted quizzes to be built. We worked with them, but we ended up being an agency for that. And that was terrible. They would pay us $200 and we'd spend 2 weeks building the quiz, which obviously not going to pay your salary. So that was attempt number one. And then we did do direct outreach. And at the time, we were just trying to get people to use it, even for free. got nothing really, like a handful of people out of thousands of messages sent. So that didn't work. Then I tried content marketing, but it was very broad. This was pretty early, like 2011, 2012. So it wasn't what it is now where everybody knows about content marketing. Back then, it was a lot of like, just write something that's popular and get traffic. So I did that and we did get traffic, but it wasn't converting. And then almost a desperation move, I guess it's like luck comes to the people that try the hardest type of thing. I just randomly wrote about how to make a personality quiz because I noticed no one really had a good just guide on that. And that's what got us our first customers. So I wrote that on a Friday night after we had been working on the product for a full year. And we were about to graduate college. We had about a month left and we had zero revenue, but we didn't have any job. We had no backup. And so I just wrote that randomly. And then the next Monday we had 3 paid signups and then 3 the next day and 3 the next day. And by the time we graduated, it was making like a couple of $1,000 a month. And we were able to swing it and work on it full time and not starve. And that was the very beginning. And then, from there, it was just a bunch of failed attempts. We tried more content. That didn't work because it was too similar to the original content. Then we, like I said, tried sales twice. That didn't work. We implemented some really strong strategic help for our customers, which is something that we still do to this day, is help our customers on the strategy side, which is not common in the SaaS world. Like we actually partner with people to think about quiz setup and strategy because no one we work with has made a quiz before. So it's the first time for everyone. It's not like sending an email or writing a blog post where they've been doing it and now they're just doing it on a new tool. It's a completely new experience. So that was the second big thing that really helped us grow: the content and then strategic help. And then the third thing that really helped us grow was doing a lot of partnerships with middle tier influencers. So people who have like a couple thousand followers, they are, business coaches or strategists or marketing coaches. And we partner up with them to supply quizzes to their customers. And then we, make an affiliate deal through that. So those are the 3 pillars that really took us through. And then on the technical side, on the product, we've always had super robust integrations with all of the ecosystems, so the email marketing systems, website builders, all that kind of stuff. And then stability, which is like not something you would normally think of as a growth tool, but because quizzes are super viral, sometimes they'll just pop off and all of a sudden there'll be like 1,000 people taking a quiz at the exact same moment in time, which from a database perspective is quite complicated. And we were the first ones to really be like, we're going to make sure our stuff is rock solid from the beginning. And even to this day, a lot of other quiz builders struggle with the stability aspect, and we've really taken that one seriously. So it's kind of those 5 main things were what got us to $1 million. And then interestingly, since then, it's been just innovating on those 5 areas. We haven't necessarily launched substantial new ideas. We've just had people that come in and make those areas better and make it their own.
That's really interesting, and I'm just wondering, so I like this strategy of you go to 1 million, you've seen and you've tested like so many things that you know what's working, so you decide to kind of like double down. I think like the working, on the stability and something that might piss off your customers and make them happy and make your product reliable is great for trust. And being in the business for like 10 years, I think this is something like you've built really well with your user base. So like it's impressive, and I'm really curious to understand like what goes through like 10 years doing like the same business and focusing on all those things. Like what were for you like the kind of critical moments, either where you thought that okay, maybe we have to move, maybe it's because in our audience we have a lot of people who are bootstrapping their business And there is always this thing of when, you're building a startup, people want to tell you that everything needs to go quickly, it has to be like fast, etc., etc. But I see, like, for me, like, your story is like super impressive because you've been super consistent, you've been focused. So what were like kind of the ingredients for you to keep that focus and keep, like that grind and consistency over time?
Yeah. So, I mean, it hasn't been easy for sure. That first 5 years, I think I rode the ups and downs a lot. Like, I got really sucked into, this is going well. Now it's not going well. Now it's going well. Now, and every week it was just super up and down. Once we reached that 5-year mark and we started to see some things start to work out, I actually took about, give or take, 18 months off, like maintained things, but really wasn't super involved in the business. We brought in a great COO who to this day manages our company excellently. And I pretty much just like had to stop and take a break because I was incredibly burnt out, like adrenal fatigue. And just, it took months before, I could even look at work again. I had just spent my days like exercising and doing yoga and going on walks and talking to friends and stuff. Like, it did that for a while. So I will say that was really the reality of what happened. On the flip side, coming back, I think my focus and our focus as a company too, and we have this in our values now, has really shifted to focusing on creating really excellent work and being less fixated on the outcomes. And so for me personally, a lot of that looks like writing. I love to write. And so, focusing on my writing, and that in turn helps the business because a lot of what I write about is, our mission and our values and where we're heading. And so, that's also my job as the CEO to do that. And everyone in our business really thrives on the same thing in their own areas. And each person in our company operates pretty independently, but also collaboratively. So each person is just getting better at their area of the business. So we're all able to enjoy that and grow and see the incremental progress, even if the growth is, you can't control it because, even more recently, right, with COVID, the first year of COVID, we grew like crazy and a lot of companies did. The second year, it flattened out a lot. And a lot of those people who had come in and started companies during the first year, decided not to continue for a variety of reasons. And so on our side, it's like, if we're riding the wave, that's incredibly hard. And it was still hard. It was not easy, even though, I had been through that. We'd been through that so many times before. It's still hard to see that. But the thing that makes it less of a roller coaster for me and for us is just having stuff that we enjoy making and creating, regardless of whether the company is, on that rocket ship trajectory. And like I said, I guess never is not accurate because we did grow very quickly from years 5 to 8, like 6 to 8, like 6 years to get to 1 million and then 2 to get to 3. So it's like, it did turn that corner. But it's not guaranteed. And so, yeah, a lot of it is really just what makes you tick and what do you actually enjoy. And for our team, it's creating things and also just really helping people. Like, we just did a kind of team exercise of like, what makes work meaningful to you? And across the board, it was seeing my work benefit other people. And you can do that whether you're growing 100% year over year or 10%, you can still do work that benefits other people. So it's a very long-winded answer to say.
No, but I really like it. I think it's cool, like to see a bit, like, for me, it's important to have like a different type of stories, because there is obviously like the success story that we see in the media of, skyrocket and exponential growth and all these things, which of course, like is exciting, but
I do think that, like having a different type of trajectory and, like everything you did, I think shows like a great way of, having your team together, making sure that you are aligned on the values and trying to understand what is like the most rewarding thing that people do. And, for me, like the key takeaways of what you said, it's like as a CEO, obviously like your role is to know, in which direction you want the company to head, make sure that your employees are happy and fulfilled. And, like try to always like not always focus on things that you can't control. So the outcome of whatever you're doing, like it's a lot out of your control. But, like the output is something that you can always improve, like a craft. And, I think it's really inspiring because a lot of people, like when and even for founders, I've interviewed and, they grew their company to 100 millions of revenue or things like that. And, in the end, sometimes I feel like they get lost with just the numbers and the growth. And the issue when that happens is like when they exit their company, they're totally lost and they don't know like, okay, like I'm going to go and do consulting. But in the end, that's not what they really like, and asking yourself what you like and focus, on the things that kind of like passionate you and everything. Like, I think it's super cool. And I'm just wondering, like, because you were talking a lot about how you help like your customers, and how exactly is structured your team right now? Do you have like dedicated people for onboarding, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I was just having a conversation with some of my team about this a couple of days ago, where we purposely balance our team out. It's pretty much 50-50 on development and customer success and customer, just making sure our customers are happy and having good success with the product. And what that means on the negative side is that we're slower on building new features. We are not outsourcing all of our support and, it takes 2 days to get a reply, but we have all these features. Instead, what we've done is we've balanced the company out. So we have dedicated people who are doing technical support. So if there's anything on that, but we also have dedicated people who are full-time coaches and strategists who help our customers implement quizzes. So someone can come in, and now we have a community where you can ask questions and get peer feedback as well. You come in, you do a 15-minute call with one of our coaches. You get an idea of what a good setup for your quiz is going to be. You can go off and work on that. We have full courses and things like that for people to access if they're the DIY type as well. And then you go into the community, and we have this full range of experts, everything from copywriters to web designers to Facebook ad strategists, technical support, funnel strategists. And they'll just basically walk you through. And every time you have a new iteration of your quiz test out, they'll put it in there, you get feedback on it, and then you launch it. And we just found that our customers, because it's something that's so new, and this makes total sense, like it's so new, you're trying something brand new, it's a core part of your business, because for most of our customers, the email list is kind of the lifeblood of how they grow. So you're trusting us with a lot. So we dedicate full-time people to literally just helping on strategy. And those people, they have a background in technical support, yes, to help with that, but also in like empathy and conversational marketing and, the full design of a funnel and how coaches work and so they have a deep understanding. And a lot of our team members also have side projects where they are coaches themselves, or they are, building small companies on the side. And we totally encourage that. And so that helps them just really understand our customers that much better.
That's interesting. And yeah, like, so you're encouraging people like working for you to kind of like dig deeper into like the industry and potentially like start like their side business so they can actually like help even further down like your customers. And I'm actually like wondering, because we talked a lot about, like the quizzes and how you help people set up, and how quizzes are just like totally different than, like writing, because if you change like a blog platform, I mean, it's easy. You have the skills of writing, you can like continue to do that. But if you have to start a quiz, you need like those skills. So if we had to give like to our listeners like really actionable tips on a quiz, like what are kind of like the steps of launching a quiz, creating it, building your funnels? Like if you had to walk us through a bit like the process.
Totally. Yeah. And I still do this with customers just to keep sharp. So every like month or so, I'll just randomly work with a customer and go through the whole process. So this is what we do. We sit down and they visualize what questions would they ask a new customer in real life. So if you're sitting down with a brand new client and you're trying to figure out which services they would need, which courses they would need, how can I help them? Right. And we like to think about it as like the coffee shop analogy. So imagine you run a coffee shop, someone comes in, they've never tried coffee before, and you're trying to help them figure out which coffee they should be drinking, which of and in the States, we're a little different with our coffee drinking. We do a lot of drip coffee, not so much espresso. So this doesn't translate over super well. We can use the skin. Yeah, that's the only one. That's the drip coffee. I realize that. So we can do skincare as an analogy instead. So someone walks in, they're like, I need to take care of my skin. What are you going to ask them? What do you need to know in order to walk over to that shelf, pull down a couple of products and be like, try these 2 products. You'll notice a difference in 3 days. Like I guarantee it, because you've never used skincare before. This is exactly what you need. Or they come in and they're like quite advanced. They have a whole skincare routine. And you need to be like, oh, here's an advanced peel you can use. Here's, some microdermabrasion you can use for, advanced skincare. Make sure that skin really shines, take it to the next level. And those are totally different people. If you just ask those 2 people to come in and stare at a wall of products, they're both going to be seeing things that aren't relevant to them. And that's not a great experience. And there's the whole super old jam study from Stanford where this person was at a farmer's market and they put out 10 jams and people didn't buy. Then they eliminated 7 of them and they only had 3 options and people bought. And so that's what we want to get to. We want to get to 3 options in the end. It can be less. And when we walk through it, it's really just, what do you need to know? And as soon as you say that, for the vast majority of people, they're like, oh, that makes way more sense. I know what I need to ask people. Oftentimes you already have a client intake questionnaire. You just wouldn't think of that being a good quiz. So you take that. Those are your questions. Your outcomes of your quiz are just the personas, right? So in the skincare, you might have the advanced skincare person, the beginner, and the intermediate, or you might do it based on skin types, whatever your buckets of customers are. And, that's also a great exercise if you haven't done it, to think about who are my customers and what buckets do they fall into. And you want to have like 3 to 5 of those in your quiz. You can make it more, but that makes it more complicated. Then you create 7 questions, which is kind of the magic number out of your, questions that you would ask somebody if you were actually talking to them. And then the title of the quiz is really simple. It's usually just what type of blank works best for you. So if it's skincare products, what type of skincare products works best for you? If it's marketing tools, what type of marketing tools work best for you? And then, you can make it a little more general, like Jenna Kutcher is one of our customers and she has a great quiz that's just, what's your secret sauce? And then from there, she connects it up to different courses and tools and resources that she has, which is great. And that's really the long and short of it. The opt-in form that comes up at the end of the quiz, you just want to let people know what benefit you're going to be offering them by getting on your list. And ideally, you send different emails to people based on what type they are. And that's the basics of it. And obviously, that's a lot of elements to create. And that's why we've poured so many of our resources into having strategy help on our side, having resources you can access on your own, or the community or the strategist, because each of those elements, we break them down and, you can come in and learn about just writing titles. You can come in and learn about just writing questions or results. You can get feedback from our experts or community about each of those elements. So you can break it down into steps rather than being like, whoa, this is a lot and I am overwhelmed. So you can do it one piece at a time.
And usually, like what people do is that they would create their quiz, then like kind of push it to a specific audience with ads, and then based on that, they would collect leads and then send the right emails. Is that correct?
Yeah. So actually in our space, right, with the coaches, the course creators, the e-commerce brands, a lot of them, what they're doing is they're just having it live front and center on their website. So if you go back to the skincare analogy, you have an online skincare store. It's basically like you being on the front page of your website, asking people questions, and it's less tacky than those old school websites where people used to walk onto the screen. And you can have a little bit of a conversation and connect in that way. And that, we don't guarantee results, but a lot of people, when they launch, they're seeing like double or triple the opt-in rates of what they had before. And it's also a great way to recommend and sell products and services because it's personalized. So that's the number one thing, is front and center on the site. And then, we do have a lot of people that run ads. And like I said, we have an ads expert in our community who helps with that. And then organic posts as well, because we have an organic expert in our community who provides a bunch of templates so you can schedule out, sharing your quiz organically over time as well.
That's really interesting, because at first I would have thought, that people that would focus really like a lot on ads, but if they are putting it on their website, I'm assuming that usually like people don't really churn because they have to have that quiz like for a long time. And so across the years, like churn, was it like a challenge for you, or in the end you felt like it's quite a sticky product because once it's there, it's there?
Yeah, so it's fallen over time. It started out very high at like 10% month over month, which is completely unsustainable. And over the last 10 years, it's fallen pretty gradually, and it's at about 5.5, closer to 5 now, which is just incredible for it to just continue falling like that.
It's a huge decrease.
Yeah. And basically what happens is if they don't churn in the first 3 months, then churn is close to 0.
Nice.
And what that means is if the quiz is not set up and launched properly, then they'll churn, because that's what's happening in the first 3 months, is the setup and the launch. That's why we put so many resources towards that, because we don't want our customers to be having this experience where they come in, they're excited, and then it lets them down. And so we put a lot of emphasis on that. But once they get it launched and it's up and running, we have customers who are on year 7, 8, 9 now. And awesome. Every year they'll update, make, tweaks to the quiz, modernize it a little bit. But the beauty of it is, like, because it is dynamic by nature, it's just something you can use for a really long time.
It's really interesting because something I want to jump on is, when you mentioned like people don't churn after like 3 months, if they've been using like the tool and this is a benefit, like they don't churn. I think what's interesting with churn is how you present it, because usually like when you see, for example, like VC-backed startup or whatever. So I've got like a lot of friends who have raised tens of millions of dollars. And when I was talking to them, about churn, the way they talk about it, makes you feel like uncomfortable about your churn because you feel like it's high, etc. But the truth is, like, people, whenever, and especially like VC-backed companies, like, which is quite funny because they kind of like change the numbers. They would say that they have no churn, or it's like 0%. And then afterwards it's like, yeah, but the way we calculate churn, it's only users who have stayed like more than 6 months with us, etc., etc. So I think it's nice that you've explained like the two different cases and segments. And in the end, I think it's also interesting to see like, like I'm guessing that to reduce churn, you're like investing heavily in the onboarding, as you said. And is it kind of like your strategy in the long run to have like this onboarding process the best as possible, so you are sure that the users who just like sign up will stay like for 7 or 8 years, like some of your customers?
Yeah. And I think it also just goes back to our team and what our team values. And everyone on our team, when we ask like what makes work meaningful to you, the number one answer is helping people be successful, especially helping our audience, because our audience is a lot of people trying to start businesses. Another one of our values is trying to have a customer base that reflects the makeup of the world, which we're not there, but we're working towards that. And that excites our team a lot to basically come alongside and help people who are trying to start companies. And that's in line with making sure that they're successful with a quiz, because at this point, we've seen that the quiz can completely transform a business. There's one customer who followed up with me about a year ago, and she was like, after launching my quiz, my list grew by a ton. My business grew like crazy. I got a book deal. I'm basically living my dream life now. And it started with the quiz. And that's not an uncommon story for us, because it does make such an impact on that list growth. And then that impacts everything else in turn. So yeah, it's both, like Jim Collins is big on the good to great guy is big on the and rather than the or. Like, it's both, because we want to help people and that really lights us all up. And it's a great business strategy, because once we get people over that initial onboarding process, like I said, the churn is extremely low, and that just makes it a super sustainable business for the long run.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a key takeaway for me, in what you said, and I think a lot of people who are building SaaS products, especially when they are targeting SMBs, so smaller businesses, because they have this lower revenue and people are not paying that much, they tend to think that the only important thing is, that it's self-service, that you don't have to talk about to your customers, that everything is done very smoothly and that you are not involved at all. But actually what's really interesting in your case is, in the long run, if you have customers who stayed for 6 to 8 years, the LTV, lifetime value, is huge. So it actually makes sense to have these customers and spend a lot of time in the onboarding, making sure they are successful, educating them, giving them the best practice. Because if they stay and if they can stay that long, it means that you are delivering tons of value. And if you can show to more people and help more people see this value, then down the line, you're going to get more word of mouth, you're going to be able to get less churn, more happy customers, and you win in the end. So no, really, really cool. I want to go back before, because I know time is flying, and I'm curious to kind of understand also those 10 years you mentioned, you had a really tough time where you had to kind of take a step back and for 18 months and have someone join as the COO. And I've seen a lot of people kind of moving a bit away, CEOs moving a bit away from the operation. So I'm curious, how did you figure out who to hire? How did the transition go, and how did the transition going back to the business and being more focused go as well?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And it all fits together, because early on in the business, I was burning out super hard, 2 years in, and I was introduced to a business coach, and I started meeting with him. And so that was during the time when everything was just up and down, and he was a great partner in just honestly listening to me complain every week about how, sales were up, sales were down, sales were up, sales were down. And that probably went on for 3 years. And then when things finally turned the corner and got a little better, I was so exhausted. It was collapsing in a heap kind of deal. And, I had still been meeting with the business coach. So we had known each other for maybe 3 years at that point. And he had introduced me to our now COO, and we had been, just having coffee chats every, few months. She's in the startup world for a long time, has been in the C-suite for quite a long time, and lots of experiences in bigger companies as well. So we were just kind of chatting. She was giving me advice. And it was just a super helpful relationship. And then I basically just explained the situation to her. when I hit that point, and we were also having some other tumult within the team, and she was like, well, I can come in and see if I can be helpful. And it was just like an immediate perfect fit. She came in, took over everything, and it was awesome. And so that gave me a chance to kind of take a step back and take a break. And then since I've reemerged, it's really helpful to be able to have real conversations with people, because we often talk about the dynamics of working together, and our CTO as well. So there's 3 of us at the C level, and we just constantly are talking about how things are going, how we're feeling, our perceptions of things. And it's tough running this business, especially because we deal with data. We're constantly having to deal with stuff that's really, really hard. So yeah, we just have a lot of conversations about things. We talk about everything as it's changing, and we have consistent meetings to just talk about the progress and where each of our heads is at. And so it's been really, really smooth coming back in, just because we do have those conversations. It's not an easy thing to do, but I think when you're able to actually just talk about everything and not have this stuff hanging in the air of how are you feeling about this? How are you feeling? It's just well, here's what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? And we have those conversations all the time, all the time. And that's made it just the easiest process.
Nice. Yeah. I think it seemed that you found this really great balance with, having someone that can also help you bounce ideas and be totally transparent on everything. So I think it's super important, because, in a startup, you're, I think co-founder, I think your CEO can be considered almost as a co-founder, right now, or C-level. I think it's the most important part, because you're going to have ups, you're going to have downs, and you need people you can count on. So this relationship must be based on trust, and must be really worked on as the years pass by. And growing a team over 10 years, how do you keep your team motivated? Is it based, because I think what was interesting about what you said a bit earlier, it was, I'm focusing on making my team happy, and I'm focusing on helping them become the best at what they do. So what's very specific things you are doing to actually make them stay with you? Because in the end, as you said, the better your team gets, the more value they have for your customers and for the company. So how do you make sure to keep this environment so they stay in the long run?
Yeah, there's a few really key points on that one. First one is, I don't know if you've read stuff by Patrick Lencioni, Death by Meeting. He has some other books. One of his books is a fable about a team that falls apart. And that team falls apart because one person on the team is not a direct communicator, and there's a conflict, and it gets swept under the rug. And then it's a fable, but a year later, the entire team falls apart. And we have experienced things like that in past versions of the Interact team. And it's something that we really vet for now when, we're bringing people on, or, just in general, it's something that's super important to us. Clear, direct communication. It's the Brene Brown thing of, clear is kind. And so we try to just be super clear about, where things are at, what each person's role is. And the other thing too is just listening to what people are wanting to do. And, you can force people to do things, but it doesn't really serve anybody that well. And so on our team, people shift roles a lot. We have a small core team, we're, 11 full time. So it's still a very small team, and roles shift around a lot. And a lot of the reason why roles shift around is just learning what people want to do and what they want to learn and what they want to become expert at. And if somebody's in a role where they want to become expert at that role, then you don't have to convince them to stay. Like, they're here because they're getting to learn and become a better version of themselves in their role. Like, and that's what everyone's after at the end of the day. Like, bettering themselves and helping other people. And if each person is in a role where that's possible, and then if they feel like they're no longer in a role where that's possible, then we can have a conversation and they can shift roles. And that happens like all the time, which I think is super important, because just because somebody switches over from one role to the other doesn't mean that they have less value now, or like they're going to have to relearn. Sure, there's stuff to relearn, but it's super valuable to have people on the team for 3, 4, 5 years. And that's something that we really value. So I would say it comes down to clear, direct communication and just listening to what people actually want to do.
That's really cool. And the transition, because you mentioned like, okay, you can switch job or like switch position. So how, like, do you have like a process for that? Like, is it me taking your role, so I'm gonna like learn from you for a bit, and after that we switch, or how does that work? Or is it like maybe like one person going into the product department because they were in marketing and they want to do more product, or in support and they want to do more product? So how does that go exactly?
Yeah, so it's kind of it does come down to communication a lot, because it takes some time to either backfill the position, which we do sometimes, right? So someone will move over to a new role and then we need to hire someone else to fill that role. That's usually what happens now. In the past, it was more like, if someone's going to switch over, then maybe myself or my co-founder will step in and take the role for a little while until we can fill it again. So yeah, it's more of a gradual process of, hey, I'm thinking I might be interested in doing something else. I'm feeling unfulfilled or burnt out or whatever it is in my current role. And then we have a conversation about, okay, well, what makes the most sense? And it's not always even clear like what the new role is or what it is exactly, because roles aren't so defined as like, okay, you're just like a product marketing manager, the way it would be at a big company. It's often more like, well, I want to learn more of marketing, or I want to learn more of product. So then we kind of work together to figure out what that new role is, while we're also figuring out how to backfill what they were doing and find somebody who's really passionate about doing, the previous job they had. So that's generally how it goes. It's a slow process.
That's I think really interesting. And I really like your approach. And I think like as a founder, it's super valuable, like to understand that the more people in your company are staying, like the more value they can have, like no matter which department they're in. And if they are in your team, it means that you've trusted them towards like doing something that, brings value, and no matter which department. So switching is definitely like interesting. I like the view. Before we kind of like wrap up, I like to ask like three questions. The first one is, what's your favorite book or podcast that you would recommend to another bootstrap entrepreneur?
Yeah. Well, since you said book and podcast, I'm going to cheat and do both. Book is 4,000 Weeks. It's a book on anti-productivity. And then podcast is called Acquired. It's stories of companies.
Nice. I need to check both. Second question is, who's your favorite bootstrap founder and why?
Yeah, the one that I follow the most and have for the entirety of this company is Rand Fishkin. And the reason why is he's really open about the successes and the failures. Like he's not holding back of like, oh, we are just doing this and we're amazing. It's very, very transparent around that, and also the strategies that he uses. And so I just really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think his book Lost and Founder is a great like story about like ups and downs, and yeah, he went through crazy stuff.
It's nuts.
Yeah, it's nuts. And the last thing is, what's like the one or two things that you really enjoy doing to kind of like regain energy in the tough times?
Yeah. I really love being outdoors and being in nature and hiking, and then spending time with people, having just like real heart-to-heart conversations, and just like remembering that the business is what it is, and it might be here and it might not, but relationships and people really are what matters, and that always helps me reset.
I love it. Yeah, very true. Can't add anything more to that. It's a great ending. So Josh, like, where can people follow you, get in touch with you, and what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, totally. Like I said, I've been trying to write more. So I'm on LinkedIn. You can look for me under Josh Haynam. I'm the only person in the world with that name. So
nice.
Very unique last name. So there, I'm on Twitter a little bit less, still trying to figure that one out. And then our website is Interact. So tryinteract.com for all the quiz stuff if you're interested in checking that out.
Awesome. Well, Josh, it was a real pleasure. Thanks for being on the Bootstrap Stories podcast, and I'll see you later.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Bootstrap Stories, the only podcast where bootstrap entrepreneurs share their journey in all transparency. If you enjoyed this episode, don't hesitate to leave us a review. And in case you want to see the interview, all episodes are live on the YouTube channel. Check out the link in the description and hit subscribe if you haven't already. Have an amazing day, and make sure to also join us in our amazing Bootstrap community, where we all helped each other to become successful and grow a profitable business. Take care and talk to you soon.